everyone. It's Sandy Peckinpah. Hello, I am back. Hope you're all doing well. I'm in Southern California right now, and it's been a very warm and muggy day, but I'm not complaining. Anyway, looking forward to having you all. Hey, Jane! Yay, yay, yay! I'm so glad you're here early today. We haven't had huge audiences over this. TK, I haven't seen you in a long time. Joanne, welcome. Hello, hello. I'm so glad you're all here. I've missed you. Yeah, I haven't had, we've all been sort of doing our own thing, I guess, this summer. And I know there were several days when I couldn't be here. And but now I'm back. I'm in Southern California and doing my thing. And I'm excited today because I shared this yesterday, but I think there weren't that many people on yesterday. So this article that I wrote about stop avoiding your creative destiny is it's one that I'm really proud of. It's 1 a.m. That's right, I forget. You're all the way across the ocean. Wow, you're up late. Well, welcome and thank you. I am honored that you're here at 1 a.m. So hopefully we'll make this important enough for you that you get something out of this, because we're talking about creativity, and creativity is in all walks of life. And I am actually at this moment having to use creativity in my real estate business because I have a particularly tough contract. Yes, thank you, TK. That's exactly right. Creativity is everything. And I shared with you on Monday, not you, TK, because I don't think you were there, the universe is creation. Exactly. And creativity emerges the moment that your imagination wakes up. And generally, that's somewhere between the ages of 3 and 6 at the dawn of consciousness. And when you look back and you have the dawn of your conscious memory, what day would that be? Think back when you were little. What is the first thing you remember about being alive? And for me, it was somewhere around the age of 3 and a half. And I remember going to a birthday party. And that was my first memory of being alive. I can't remember before then. And I remember the circumstances. I've shared with you the circumstances were sort of harrowing because I was in the back seat of a car and I stuck my finger in the cigarette lighter that was very, very hot and burned my finger. And that's the first memory I have if I go back in my memories of being alive. I can't remember a thing before then. I can remember things after. So start thinking, what is your first memory of being alive? And somewhere around that age, you also have a memory of doing something that was really fun, really creative. Like for me, there were two things. I remember finger painting. I remember it being really fun, and I loved the colors, I loved the feel of the paint, and I loved the smell of the poster paints. I remember that. And then for other people, hey, my sister Sue is on. Hey, Sue, we're talking about the memory of the first moment that we're alive. And I was sharing the story, actually you were just a tiny baby at the time, and I got to go all by myself to a birthday party. And coming back, I got talked into putting my finger in a cigarette lighter. The little girl that was with me said, stick it in there, see what happens. And so I did, and it burned the heck out of my finger. But when I got back to the house, and this was in Virginia, when I got back to the house and I got out of the car, and I remember Mom saying, did you have a good time? And I think, Sue, you were actually on her hip, I think, because she always had you in her arms. And I remember just saying, yeah. And I never told her about my finger. In fact, I recently told her that story, and my mother is 91 now. So, yeah, isn't that a strange memory? And that is truly the first moment I remember being alive. It's called the dawn of conscious memory. The dawn of conscious memory also entails the dawn of conscious creativity. So what moment in your past do you remember actually having a creative thought, like pretending you were someone, or doing something that was sort of creative? Like I can remember looking in the grass for 4-leaf clovers because I wanted to press them in a book, because I remember how pretty they looked when they were pressed. And I don't know that I ever found a true 4-leaf clover, because I don't even know if they exist. But I remember doing that. And I remember, just before you came on, Sue, I remember the smell of poster paints and playing with poster paints and butcher paper, and the smell of the paint. I loved the smell of the paint. And then I remember hopscotch, chalk. And all those are all things that wake up our creativity. And as TK said, it's everything. TK, just before you came on, Sue, TK said, creativity is everything. It is the beginning of the universe. It's the beginning of life. It's the beginning of everything. Hey, Judy, so glad you're here. Thank you. It is. It's the beginning. So people say, oh, I'm not creative, but guess what? Everybody has the potential to be creative because they were when they were little. And the only thing that stopped them, the only thing, was a rigid structure in school maybe that made you conform to a certain type of what they believed was creative. Like I can remember being graded on my paintings and my art pieces when really there should not be a grade. And I can remember being graded on my stories when really, as long as the punctuation was correct, it's your story. You get to create how you want it to be. And I remember getting graded on, remember when we used to have to make things like missions out of popsicle sticks and sculptures and stuff to represent a certain era in history. And I remember getting graded on that and thinking, oh, well, maybe mine isn't as good as hers. And so then I started to have doubts about my creativity in that particular area. And so then suddenly people say, oh, I can't paint, I can't sculpt, I can't write, because we're stuck in a system that grades us. And then we start to have doubts in ourselves. In the Journal of Anatomy, in the article, The Evolution of Human Artistic Creativity, it says, art in its many forms is practiced by almost all human cultures and can be regarded as one of the defining characteristics of the human species. So does that sound like anybody gets left out of creativity? TK, you said it. It's everything. No one gets left out of being creative. Creativity defines us. We created our own story of life. Yes, things happen to us, but guess what? We created how we'd handle them. We may have lost a job or lost a marriage or, had changes of circumstances in life. Those were things handed to us that we didn't expect, maybe. That's right, TK says. But guess what? How we handled it, that was our creativity. If we figured out a way to make our bank account stretch until the next job, or we figured out how to decorate our homes, or even if somebody else helped decorate, you still made the final choice and wrote the check and said, yeah, I like that. It feels good. That's all creativity, because art defines us. Art gets lost in the mire of being an adult. And we're in a rigid structure of believing that we have to get graded on it. I mean, even books, all you have to do is go to the classics on Amazon. C.S. Lewis, John Steinbeck. You will see that there are negative reviews on the classic works of all time. I heard someone say once, I don't trust a book that has all 5-star reviews. And isn't that interesting? Because what that means is they don't believe that it could possibly appeal to everyone. And isn't that true about all art? Some people love Picasso. Some people hate Picasso. It's all human choice and our own ability to create our own world and what we love and what we don't love. We see it through our eyes. You may love a teal couch. Another person may say, oh my gosh, that's a horrid color for a couch. As you know, I love that color. So, you know what? If someday I should have a couch that color because I love it. I would like to redo my whole house and have colors that I love, because when I did my house, I was very, had a style in mind. Blue is your favorite color. Mine too. Mine too. So, got my cappuccino and it's delicious. So I'm excited that you understand this concept, because when I started to understand it, and I didn't understand it at first, but I studied it. I started looking at it. And this article that I wrote for Thrive Global talks about creativity and all that I've learned as a result of this article, of this study rather, and all that I've learned personally and professionally. And if you haven't read the article, you can go to my Twitter page, and it's tagged at the very top of my profile page, at Sandy Peckinpah. And at the very top of my profile page is the article, and I have it pinned to the top so you can read it on Thrive Global. The link will just take you right there. And you can read exactly what we're talking about today. I'm really proud of that article because it's part of my creative self. I express my creativity through words. And guess what? Creativity isn't only one thing. I'm not just good at writing, because it's not confined. Creativity is your brain expanding. It's not confined to one thing. I choose to express most of it in writing, but I also love making jewelry. I love creating a garden. I love cooking food. I love taking photographs on my iPhone. I love painting on ceramics. I love dressing up like a doll. I love decorating my home. I love getting creative when I write about my houses that I have listed. I love all aspects of creativity because my brain has a desire to fulfill its creative potential. And that's what I named this article. I named this article, okay, I'll tell you what I named it. Stop avoiding your creative destiny. Get started now. If you keep resisting the creative you, then you've got work to do. So this is day 3 of us discussing this, because we've been discussing it earlier in the week. And now if you haven't listened to the other 2, you can go back and listen to them, because now we're at the point where I say to you, your job is to figure out your many expressions of art and stop putting it off as something that you'll do in the uncertain future. You have to do the work now. Don't restrict your creativity by saying, I'm not good at that. You might be. You just haven't practiced it enough. You know, and I've given this example before, but I want to reiterate something. As a writer, in fact, I'm reading a book by Elizabeth Gilbert right now. Elizabeth Gilbert wrote Eat, Pray, Love. Hey, JH5, welcome. Oh, I love those color of hearts. That's sort of a periwinkle blue. Thank you. We're talking about creativity. Why am I talking about creativity? Because it's something I'm fascinated with, and I know for a fact everybody has creative potential. And today's broadcast is based on an article that I wrote for Thrive Global, which is Huffington Post's sort of extension from Ariana Huffington. She created this platform to talk about self, to talk about creativity, to talk about self-improvement and well-being. And so she selected this article that I wrote on creativity and featured it. And so I'm talking about it because I want to just compound the impact that it has the potential to make by urging you to realize your creative potential, because everybody has the potential. Stephen Pressfield, in his book War of Art, which is one of my all-time favorite inspirational books for writers or creative people. If you're creative, if you have a desire to be creative, read his book. He asks, are you a writer who doesn't write? A painter who doesn't paint? An entrepreneur who never starts a business venture? Then you know what resistance is. The resistance you feel is a force of nature. Now, he says that everyone feels resistant to commit to their artistic ability, because I know I did in the beginning when I would find out that, like, when I first started writing, I was published in magazines. There's one called Vintage Scene and another one called Business Scene that I was writing for. And that was really my re-entry into writing after having written 3 books. And I was so excited to write these articles. They had me write them once a month. And when I knew the deadline, I knew it. I resisted. I always waited until the last 48 hours to turn that article in. The same thing happened when I knew I had a speaking engagement 3 weeks ago. I knew in March that I had a speaking engagement on July 13th. Do you think that I started my presentation and getting my slideshow together 3 months before? 2 months before? 1 month before? No. I started getting the presentation ready 5 days before, and that was it. And I was still hustling till the very last minute. Why? Because resistance is a force of nature. Now, once you get into not resisting it, to enjoying the process, because writing, I got to tell you, it's hard. I don't always enjoy it. I enjoy after. I enjoy the completion. I enjoy the impact that it has. I enjoy seeing my article on Huffington Post. By the way, I found out Huffington Post published another one of my articles yesterday. I enjoy that feeling. And when I get more rewards like that, I'm less likely to resist. And so when I saw that they accepted this article, I immediately jumped into another article, started writing again. That's you, TK, isn't it? Do you understand that process? What it's like to get so excited because it's fueling your creative potential. Yeah, TK. When your creative potential is fulfilled, it releases endorphins. Yes, it's everything. It's everything. We're not here to never do more than finger painting. Our creativity is meant to expand. Now, believe me, sometimes I think about that, how I'm so excited that someday I'm going to have grandchildren and I'm going to get out big rolls of butcher paper and get that poster paint and enjoy finger painting with them again. Believe me, those are things I want to return to in my life. Play-Doh, I love the smell of Play-Doh. All of those things, popsicle sticks, making, sandcastles. Yes, I will do that. Thank you. And so, but what happens is you have to realize, my daughter says 2 more years. That's what she tells me. So I guess I have a little time to wait. So, what I want to explain to you is that yearning that you feel when you see someone else's work, that's your own calling. I know that when I saw other people's articles on Huffington Post that I knew, I would say, oh, I want that to be me. And it kept calling me. And sometimes it turns into jealousy, which is not attractive, because what all it is pointing a finger at your own failure to follow through. That's where that comes from. And so once you stop resisting, and what I had to do to get published in Huffington was to get better, quite frankly. I wasn't good enough. I had to keep writing. I had to keep massaging my words and looking at the structure of how they wrote the articles and what made some articles successful and others not. And I had to keep doing that. It took me from the point that I first started writing and submitting to Huffington Post, it took me 2 years before I finally got my first article accepted. And now I've had, I think, 6. 2 years. That may seem like a long time. Was I miserable until then? No. I still had the creative high. I still got excited at the prospect of sitting down to write. Did I resist sitting down to write? You bet. I'd do everything I could to avoid it until I finally sat myself down. I'd decide, I need to dust my furniture. I need to organize that closet. I need to make lunch. I need to make myself, make some phone calls. And I would do everything until I finally ran out of stuff and realized my calling was to sit down and write. So I'd do it. And like I told you, sometimes I resisted right up till the last minute, especially on those magazine articles. 48 hours. I've got 48 hours to submit an article and they're going to be publishing it next week. It's human nature to resist. Everyone feels resistance to commit to your artistic calling. And by artistic, I don't mean painting, writing. You're going to write a book one day when I can. I would set a date. TK, set a date when you're going to start to write that book. Set a date. And you know what? You're going to do it. Set a date. Set a date to start. You could even start with one sentence. You're going to wake up and write one day. How about tomorrow? How about Saturday morning? I hope so. You're going to be one of the success stories because I know your commitment to the subject. It's not always easy, that's true. It's not. But the hardest part is just sitting down to do it. You need to grow. Yeah. But isn't it interesting? Your work grows with you. So when you start, when I look back on my writing even, 15 years ago, I look at all the blemishes, the things I could have done better, the things that I wish I had said, like in my first book. I mean, there are still things that I go back and I say, I kind of wish that I'd done this differently. You're always going to have that. You're always going to grow. I forget whether it was C.S. Lewis, might have been C.S. Lewis, who said when he went back and looked at his earlier work, he would cringe. Oh no, it was Tolkien who was telling C.S. Lewis that he was really struggling with his genre. And C.S. Lewis and grew to hate it. But C.S. Lewis helped him see a new perspective of his work. And that's when he wrote Lord of the Rings, I think. So you see, we all have those doubts about how hard it's going to be. Yeah, it's hard. But the hardest thing is really just committing. That's the hardest thing. Is saying, I am going to wake up tomorrow and write. Or I am going to wake up tomorrow and learn to bake. Or paint. Or study a new way to look at contracts. Or, like in real estate, I'm constantly having to come up with creative ways to deal with stuff. That's all part of your creative potential. So it's not always confined to what you see traditionally as art. If you keep avoiding the artistic you, then you've got work to do. Make a commitment today. I've got several things I want to tell you about making a commitment. Explore things you loved in the past. What did you spend hours doing when you were a child? Well, I know that my sister and I used to play with Barbie dolls, and I always wanted to sew the clothing, and Sue always wanted to just play and make up stories with them. And so for me, my creative expression was making clothes. I'd needle and thread, I'd make clothes. And my sister wanted to create a story around playing with the dolls. And so, yeah, so isn't that funny? We both had two entirely different aspects of looking at how to play with dolls. How about, did you love acting stories, acting out stories? Did you love singing? Did you love drawing? Did you love sculpting? Did you love playing with Play-Doh? Did you love painting? Did you love organizing? Organizing is a form of creativity. How do you make things fit in your house and make it look good? Number 2, what work from other people causes a creative yearning and sometimes a jealousy. For me, there are 2 women that I follow on Facebook who had articles on Huffington Post long before I did. And I had creative envy. And I didn't like the feeling. It was not attractive. And as I said, all it is pointing the finger at myself for what I am not fulfilling. I am not fulfilling my creative potential. So think about those things. What causes you a creative yearning? If you feel a creative yearning, then that's probably something that you should be doing creatively. And for me, it was writing. Number 3, what do you love? What do you spend hours enjoying, thinking about, researching, reading? I know what my sister's is. It's genealogy. She can spend hours at a computer tracking genealogy. It's fascinating. It's fascinating, the stories she comes up with and how obscure. How do you find music? Oh my gosh, I love music. I used to be a singer and traveled up with people when I was a show. We traveled all over the United States and in Europe and Africa. And I loved singing. I loved dancing. What does it mean to me? It's a form of expression to me. It's a way of storytelling. My son? Yes! I'll tell you, Sue's son, my nephew, is a musician extraordinaire. He found his calling a long time ago with music. And I remember he started with piano, but that wasn't it. That didn't get him. But what did was guitar. And he is an amazing guitarist. You've been storytelling through my music for years, then you're definitely a writer and musician since you were a kid. A writer and musician, because that's what songs are, storytelling. Wow, TK. That is awesome. Yep. So that's something that you love doing, that you spend hours doing, and producing your own music. There you go. That's your thing. Number 4, what artistic activities soothe you? I bet you would also say that music soothes you, that you enjoy writing and producing and creating songs and music. Music as an observer soothes people. We use it as sort of a soundtrack of our lives. Whatever mood we're in, that's what music we want to hear rather. And so when you pinpoint what artistic activities soothe you, music, going to an art gallery, reading, watching great movies, what are the things that you look to as relaxation and soothing? Now, there are times when I use writing to soothe, because nothing relaxes me more than when I sit down and I'm ready to write and it flows. And that's a form of being good to myself. Number 5, what do others say you have a talent for? I know that all of you have something that people say you're really good at, whether it's working with animals. That's a form of creativity. How to get the animal trained to do what you need it to do. Working with the local theater, working in the choir at church, using your music. And part of the thing that my daughter does is she compiles playlists, because she's a fitness instructor and she does spinning classes extraordinaire, and she has to create new playlists every day. She's not allowed to play the same playlist. Every day she has to come up with a new one. So she has to figure out the beats. She has to figure out what she's going to do within that class. It's a huge amount of time. Some people think, spin instructors just show up and they do an hour class. No, there's so much preparation. She also has to come up with inspirational things that she's going to say during the class to keep people motivated. Her spin classes are very scripted, and that's what she does as her creative outlet. So part of that is driven by creativity, and part of it is very physical. And all of it creates the story that she's trying to tell. So that was number 5. Okay, number 6, here's the last question. And this one's for all of you. Ask the question you've asked yourself before. Someday, I want to, and then you fill in the blank. What is that? I said for years, someday I want to write a book about my son. Someday. Guess what? Saying that doesn't fulfill your creative potential. It just causes a yearning inside of you. And you're not fulfilling your creative destiny. So fill in that blank and wake up tomorrow and say, today is the day I want to start writing my book, or doing my work in a different way, or decorating my home, or join the choir, or whatever that creative expression is. If you commit to the discovery process in those ways, one day you'll wake up knowing that it's your time. You'll recognize that little flutter inside of you. You'll get really excited, and you'll feel the joy that you get to spend another day doing what you love. That's the best feeling in the world. So thank you for joining me on this creative adventure. I hope that you write to me on Twitter, because if you write to me on Twitter and tell me what your creative desire is, I would love to hear about it. I'm so excited that you were all joining me. Thank you for all of the hearts. I'm so blessed to have all of these hearts, and it fuels my creative potential. So thank you so much for joining me. You are all the best.